So this is a story, and the place I've chosen to begin it is actually in someone else's story, and it's called The Winter Ghost by Kate Moss. And on page 115 she has this line, and it says, "To survive when others do not takes a particular sort of courage." So that's it. So to survive where others do not takes a particular form of courage. So that's where I'm starting. And the reason for the fire is because the fire purifies. And what's going on, actually, there's a massive vortex in this room, and what it's doing is it's drawing air and also negative energy out of the room, up through the fire and into the vortex. And the vortex is a very significant means by which we can move from one place to another. And when we're on this planet with our 3D ways of looking at things, often the shortest way between 2 points is to get in an airplane or whatever. But in terms of actually moving beyond this planet, the vortex is the most excellent way of transportation. And this is known in conventional life, because if we think of Doctor Who and the David Tennant series, the blue vortex, that's what the TARDIS does. It's showing there's a blue vortex, it's completely in your face, you couldn't possibly miss it. And there it is. So it's in all the popular media, the blue vortex. So the reason why this comes into the story is because I'm in the middle of doing what I could call the mother of all universal soul retrievals now, and I started it yesterday evening, and it's going to go on until it's finished. So up until this point, the largest number of universal soul retrievals ever done was 13 people at one go, and that was in a cafe in Accrington at a special event. And I've done like a family of 4, that kind of thing, but I've not actually worked with this number before in my entire experience of working as a shaman. So it's a pretty big deal for me to be doing this. So what is so extraordinary to me, the wonderful gifts of fiction is that fiction can enable us to become aware of something that once we become aware of it, we think, duh, why didn't I realise that like ages ago? But that's how it is. Often it's other people's insights that propel us into true understanding. So I had this experience when I was a child, and it's very, very common. Many people have had this experience, and particularly back in those days, because it was mid-20th century. Seems like forever ago now, doesn't it? So the experience included sexual and satanic and ritualistic abuse, and it was done to children, and I was one of the many children involved. And it was done in a place called Burnham Beeches, where a certain former British Prime Minister was famous for having his elite ceremonies, let's put it that way. So in the drawing, the trees represent Burnham Beeches. That's the actual physical location where it happened. And what's been happening for me is that for most of my life I had no memories, and this is a very common thing for people who've been through severe abuse. You just lose all memories. And that's appropriate, because for those memories to come up would be more than the person would be able to cope with. And it has to take time, and when the time arrives, when the person's ready spiritually to be able to face what they've been through, that's when it starts to come up. And it happened to me by getting an illness called ME, which I then had for 10 years, and I was 38 at the time, and it's been an extraordinary 30-year journey. Wow, hard to believe, but it's true. It's been a 30-year journey. So what happened for me is very, very recently, I suddenly had a whole load of memories went kadunk, and that was not the first time. I've had quite a bit of this happening, but it's been the most intense experience, and that happened on Monday, so here we are on Wednesday. It's only 2 days ago. So when I did my drawing, what I wanted to do is I wanted to find a way to convey what this is about, and to explain about the word remembering, because remembering is an extraordinary word. Bearing in mind what I'm going to tell you, it's even more extraordinary, because remembering is literally to put the members back together. It's putting the pieces together. which is what you need to do when you create a story. You remember, you put the pieces together until it's something that can be understood and is coherent, and that's like amazing when that happens, to say the least. So it's a very difficult thing for me to do, and I'm just going to keep on doing it. So the drawing represents the people that were taken, that were used in the ceremonies, and the whole, everything about them is summarized into one speech bubble, which is ah, and then I like this word elite, it feels appropriate. An elite that were conducting the ceremony is ha 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 ha, it's all a big joke, and that kind of that means a lot. So when I read this book, I need to say the little relevant thing about this book, because there comes a point when the person in the story, the hero if you like, has an experience and he realizes that there are many, many lost souls that were treated appallingly in the past, and he feels that he must do something about it, and he does. And with his unbending intent, he literally climbs up a mountain and literally uses his bare hands to pull decayed, rotten material out of the cave entrance, and manages to get in and discovers all the bones and the clothing and the bodies of the many, many hundreds of people that were in the caves. This is near Carcassonne, which is south of France, which is Cathars, persecuted by the Catholic Church. Very well known thing. Kate Moss seems to love to write about that particular period. So that's what I was reading about, and it was like the light bulb duh moment came, and I thought, okay, so I've become aware in recent weeks, because I'm actually getting these memories back after having so many years of not doing so, and the one which was again, it feels like about several months ago, it was only like 2 weeks and 2 days ago, that's really what kicked everything off. And that in that memory, it was the feeling of it being the long night was over, and there was a pile of children's body parts and blood and other fluids, and I was in abject, naked terror, and I lived with that terror for about a day and a half. And in that time, I kept on asking myself the question, what am I supposed to do with this? Other emotions had come out, I've been able to finally process them. I didn't know what to do with terror. It's just so big. What do I do with terror? So I lived in the place of what do I do with terror? And literally, so that starts on Monday morning. By the Tuesday evening, sitting outside in my bicycle shed, I realised I completely processed it, and I hadn't done anything with my conscious mind. All my conscious mind could say is, what do I do with terror? But I managed to do a complete resolution. What it is, I gave the job over to my subconscious, and the subconscious is programmable and far more powerful than conscious can ever be. So there's a huge gift there in terms of healing and healing modalities and universal soul retrieval and all shamanic work, to be honest. So I'm now going to go to the most recent thing, which was 2 days ago? Yeah. So I found myself in a situation where I was instructed to work with the green medicine and to spend time outside, and what was happening for me was a lot of remembering, and I saw images and I heard sounds. And one of the things that occurred to me afterwards was that it's very strange how these things go. The subconscious, the universal spirit, it throws you little clues, little breadcrumbs. So breadcrumb I received all the way back in 1999, 2000, when I was doing a training, which was very demanding, very vigorous training. And I was simply wandering around my community. At that point I lived on 225 acres of land in North Lancashire, 11 adults and 7 children living together in an intentional community. And wherever I went, I just said to people, the poor babies. The poor babies. I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. I hadn't a clue. Fast forward loads of years until I met Angela. Now Angela was introduced to me by someone who I trained, who was a healer in their own right, and she referred me to Angela, and I did universal soul retrieval for Angela, and it transpired that Angela had experienced the same kind of abuse as I experienced, but as a baby. And I remember when I first heard, I cannot possibly conceive of what that's like. That was the first thing that entered my. How could I possibly understand? And it was an extraordinary universal soul retrieval. It did take all afternoon, and it was me and my friend, the healer, both of us doing this work. And what happened for her afterwards is it was a very difficult time for her, but the only way that she was able to integrate was by feeling, which is very much what's been going on for me. Feeling. So what I finally realized is that what was so exceptional about me is I wasn't killed. My life was not terminated. All these things happened to all these children and to me, and I don't know if there were any others, but I survived, and that puts an incredible implication. And the implication is if I survive, that means I'm the witness. And if I'm the witness, that means my job is to remember, and that's what I've been doing. I've been remembering what went on and what happened to the children and the babies. So that's where the poor babies come from, because there were babies, and the way they ended their lives is not the way anyone will want to end their life, absolutely for sure. So it's a very disturbing thing to be processing. But what then happened for me last night, the really big breakthrough came when I realized, okay, so you're here, it's coming up, you're witnessing, you're remembering, because you weren't able to do the witnessing before because it was all shut down, so you weren't able to cope with it. But now you're doing it, and you're remembering. You're literally, the polar body parts, you're putting them back together in terms of people's experiences, what happened. And so it was like a lightning flash, universal soul retrieval. But before that was psychopomp. So all these children that experience these things until they died, they need psychopomp very clearly. But then what's come up for one of the people, actually more than one of the people I've trained, had this thing, they were doing a psychopomp, and they were told, do a universal soul retrieval. So that was brought back into my awareness again. So what I've been doing since last night, I've been doing universal soul retrieval for all of the lost ones in Burnham Beaches. I'm not dealing with anywhere else. And on the particular occasion, there would be a whole bunch of children, because it's a regular thing, and it would have happened afterwards, it would have happened before. So all of these lost souls, the USR began last night, and the very first thing to do was to get them the hell away from there, as you can imagine. So what happened with shamanism, we go back into time, so I'm going back into multiple time frames, but to one spatial location. And the guides, all the guides, the helpers are there, and they're opening up like a portal, and then the children and the babies are leaving that place. And that's what the vortex represents. The vortex is the means by which they have travelled. There'll be a portal which actually was that shape, and up the vortex. And where they arrived is a place which is where I've been working for many years with Universal Soul Retrieval, and there's a lagoon. It's a tropical lagoon, and the water is of the most idyllic temperature. The island has got palm trees and lots of other trees. It's very full of fruit, lots of nutrition there. And in the water there are children and dolphins, and they're playing and swimming together, and they do these incredible kinetic multidimensional sculptures whereby they're literally going in and out of the water, and they haven't got any constraints of gravity, and they're doing these movements which are not 3D, they're more than 3D, they're multi-D, and phasing in and out of existence and so on. It's just the most beautiful thing to see, and that's how it always is. But what now happened is that all these children, and it's like there's dozens and then there's hundreds, and then we just stop counting, and the guides are having to do what we need to do. We have a really big one, which is that they are making many copies of themselves. So there's vast numbers of Tattle, there's vast numbers of DL, there's vast numbers of Narbeth, vast numbers of every single guide, and each soul that arrives is being given on the spot healing by the guides, which is just what would normally happen. And the order is different because we begin this universal soul retrieval with the lagoon with the children and the dolphins. That's not where a universal soul retrieval would normally start, but that's where it started for this particular situation, being such an extreme situation, I guess. So all this healing is being done, and ones that have actually been through the healing process and start to look like they're coming back to some kind of sense of vitality, then I see them like staggering like little old ladies, little old gentlemen down to the water's edge, and I see them looking at the water, and I know they want to get in, and I don't need to do anything because the children and the dolphins come up towards them and they start attracting their attention, and it's so beautiful. The sound the dolphins are making, the sound the children are making, and the next thing you know, they're just rushing in there and they're completely diving into the water, and as soon as their entire soul spirit is completely immersed in the water, there's this wonderful kind of radiant sort of light being phenomenon happens, and it's just so beautiful, and so much is going on. And while all that's going on, the universal soul retrieval itself has already been activated, and the whole number of other healing modalities, which is all part of the universal soul retrieval, are being activated as well. So I'll do my best to list them once I've had something to drink. So the very first thing is negative energy release. Negative energy release is traditionally done with the blue vortex, and what happens is the blue vortex is manifested and it's activated, and it sucks, it produces a suction, it sucks all the negative energies out of the client. So this is normally a living client that's come to you and booked a treatment. In this particular case, we're talking about beings that died more than 50 years ago in the worst possible circumstances, but they're still getting the negative energy release. And as soon as that kicks in, then the curse removal kicks in as well, whereby all curse words uttered by all beings in all lifetimes towards each being that we're working on become externalized, and then the curses are literally broken down from sentences into words, into letters, into myths, and it's just being again straight up the vortex. So negative energies up the vortex, curses up the vortex. And then there's an energy body scan and repair which occurs, and that involves different guides doing different things, and that's a whole long thing to explain. We'll go into that in more detail later on. And then the other thing that happens is we've got DNA scan and repair going on, and that's a whole process in itself involving particular guides. Everyone works in a different way, but particular guides will actually scan the DNA of the client and notice where there are any anomalies in the base pair sequencing of course being caused by pollution, toxicity, negative energy, whatever it might happen to be. Even cursing can cause damage to the DNA. So all that is first of all noted, and then the anomalies, base pair sequences, are then realigned in accordance with the client's optimal human template, in accordance with the wishes of their higher self. So all that's going on as well. And then the other thing that's going on is the karma release. And in this particular case, because it's such a particular case, you've got these, what I like to call elites, doing these things, and you've got these children and babies that have had these things done to them. So in this particular case, what happens is it's to do with the connection between each lost one and the member of the elite, where they've got some karmic tie from either that lifetime or previous lifetimes. And then the energy of the sun, our sun, goes in there, and when it goes into the connection between the client and the source of the issue, so in this case a particular elite and the particular lost soul, and the sunlight burns through that connection and makes it cleansed and purified. And in this particular case, every single connection, once it's been cleansed and purified, it was cut. So all the karmic connections between the lost ones and it all cut, done. And then that takes us to the universal soul retrieval itself. In the universal soul retrieval itself, what we do is we work together, the guides, the helpers, and myself, with each client, and we're talking about a vast number of beings. So what we do is we multiply ourselves, so there are as many as us as there needs to be, and basically we end up with just a vast number of us. And then the other thing I'm being instructed to add at this point, while all this is going on, there's a very particular energy from one saint, and the saint is called Saint Germain. And Saint Germain's energy that's particularly relevant for this is the violet flame, or the violet light, and it is all of the negativity of the past is being transmuted by the violet flame that burns brightly around us and within us. We feel inspired. All of the negativity of the past is being transmuted by the violet flame that burns brightly around us and within us. We feel inspired. All of the negativity of the past is being transmuted by the violet flame that burns brightly around us and within us. We feel inspired. So that is the overlighting energy that's going on. There are angels coming in, going off. There's a lot of other beings attracted to what's going on. And this has been going on since, I don't know, about 10:30 last night, something like that. So there's been a lot of going out, finding the lost soul parts, dialoguing with them, and inviting them to come with us, and returning them to the lagoon with the children and the dolphins and all the lost souls. So what has happened, and it happens maybe around 11 o'clock last night, that the size of the lagoon with the children and dolphins, it just became absolutely humongous, because it had to be, to accommodate so many beings. So all this is going on. The universal soul retrieval has not finished, because the soul parts have not actually been returned to each lost soul. That hasn't happened yet, but that will happen at some point today, most likely. So what I've learned from this is this: if life gives you lemons, then make use of them. So this is a very difficult thing to be going through and to be speaking about, and it's like there's something about the more challenging something is, the more of an opportunity it presents itself. So I'm going to conclude all this by reading out what I wrote last night. This is how it began. I need to do psychopomp ceremonies to release the spirits of the lost children of Burnham Beeches in Buckinghamshire. I am their witness. I'm speaker for the dead. Indeed it is so. I feel trepidation. I've got lower abdominal pain, and I need to go upstairs and do an absolutely gigantic poo, the like of which I can't remember doing before. Then outside, I'm opening the portal. The lost children are entering the lagoon with the children and the dolphins. The guides and the helpers are multiplying, giving on-the-spot healing. Hundreds, thousands being healed. USR commencing. Other beings coming in to help with the healing. And then very clearly I did this thing which my shaman brother David the Shaman Chef taught me to do. I call on Saint Germain, I call on Saint Germain, I call on Saint Germain. If you do that 3 times, that brings the wonderful healing energy of Saint Germain in. So then I was lying down. I finished reading the book. I was lying down by the fire, and I felt a very strong pressure in my heart, and it was pretty darn uncomfortable actually. And I thought, okay, very strong pressure in the heart, right? Stay present, stay with it, that's what's going on. And what very quickly happened within minutes, that was the memories of the poor babies, the terror-filled blood being drunk by the elite. There's a special name for that. There's a fancy name for some chemical substance they get from drinking the blood of terrified children and babies, and it does something to them. That's the one. Laughter blended with screams, sobs and grunts. Souls leaving behind broken bodies, waiting in purgatory to be found by the ones who can hear their cries for release, for the light, for the love of God, for us to remember them, heal them and return them to the light. For days I've been calling upon Saint Germain without even knowing why. Now it's clear, it's for this work. They did not die in vain. They died that we would remember and put a stop to this iniquity. I surrender to the remembering. And the only other things I want to add to that is that I knew there was something funny going on with me on Monday morning, because I could feel myself simmering. And this is an incredibly useful terminology to have, which is if you are preparing to do some work, which could be the release of something, and it's like 2020, 2021, it's been such a time for the release of the most challenging material for so many millions of people worldwide. When you feel that you're simmering, that means you know something's coming to the surface. You don't know what it is, but you have that feeling. So I definitely had that on the Monday before, the morning before all this started. And then the Tuesday evening, yes, to survive when others do not takes a particular form of courage. That's from the book. And I've mentioned about the babies, and I mentioned about Angela. That's good. So I'm a witness who created the chronicle and is healing the lost ones. That's really what it's about. So, and then Wednesday morning, that's this morning, sharp stabbing pains, occasional, particularly in different parts of the back in various locations. So I'm walking, I was like, so it's all a bit of a strange thing that's going on. So that is the story. So I'm going to leave it there.